Well, we're joined now by Baroness Margaret Eaton, Chair of the LGA. Margaret, thanks for joining us.
Pleasure to be here.
Now, it's been quite a year for you as well as local government. How would you sum it all up?
I think it's been exciting, it's been stimulating, it's been demanding, and it's been hugely challenging for the sector.
And Margaret, you mentioned challenges. What have been some of the hardest challenges this year?
Well, first of all, it was sort of almost gone full circle, because if you remember last January, we were knee-deep in snow, and I think people weren't as prepared as they are this year. And lots of lessons were learnt last year, but we have a problem because we've only 2 suppliers in the whole country. So last winter we started with really bad weather, but local government actually cooperated with neighbours and with each other, and actually we did a good job in the circumstances. This year we're in the same position, except that local authorities have had a huge amount of salt and grit in reserve. So I think we started in a different position, but we still got the problem of only 2 suppliers. So, this is sort of very similar to last January in some senses, but I think we've coped well so far.
And how have you found the realities of dealing with a coalition central government?
Well, it's interesting because, of course, half the year has been with the previous government, and there are things we achieved with them, like getting extra resources for potholes as a result of last winter. But then, of course, we started, as you say, the coalition, which brings a whole new lot of thinking to all of us. But what we did do very early through the summer was work very hard at pointing out the need for decision-making to be much more local, and that we were asking for more devolved decision-making and a more localist approach. And we've worked really hard at getting that message across to the coalition.
And how different is local government looking at the end of 2010 from how it looked at the end of 2009?
Well, I think we are in a more difficult financial position. We knew it was coming, so there was really serious preparation and anticipation. Now we're actually here with the realities, and we lost 1.6 billion in the summer, sort of an instant decision to take money out, which was difficult partway through the year. And now we've seen a really hard settlement. And it isn't as if we weren't expecting it, but even so, that creates huge challenges in terms of how services are managed, how the public are protected from actually what could be a loss of service if it isn't managed well. And local government's always up for a challenge, but actually what has happened, that we knew the cuts were spaced over 4 years, but actually they're front-loaded, which means that the challenge of how we deal with instantly taking resource out is made that problem even more difficult.
And how do you believe that the cuts announced in the CSR are going to affect councils over the next year?
Well, I think they'll affect different places in different ways, because my whole point, the sector's point about making local decisions, is that if you are a council with a lot of elderly people, for instance, some of the decisions you choose to make with what resource you have will be different from somebody who's got a young population. So local flexibility is important, but I think all are having huge challenges about maintaining frontline services. And sadly, we've seen that there is a plan to remove, obviously, the biggest cost to local authorities is the wages bill, and that's always a really difficult thing to do. We know that overall our anticipation is that there'll be 140 posts taken out of local government, but that doesn't mean to say that's 140 jobs, but it does indicate there'll be quite high redundancy level across the board.
Well, looking forward now to the long-awaited Localism and Decentralisation Bill, what are you hoping to see in it?
Well, there is to be, we know, a power of general competence, which we've asked for, which means that, as I understand it, that a local authority can do anything that it chooses to do on behalf of its residents, as long as it's not illegal. Now, how the fine print will appear, what the implications are, we'll have to look at it. But I know that we've got that message across, so let's hope that it gives us the freedom to do the right thing for our electorate that we're hoping it will.
Now, Margaret, you've played a key part in shaping the coalition government's local government policy. In 2011, what are you going to be lobbying hardest for?
I'll be lobbying for what I've lobbied for a long time, is that local people and local authorities are the best placed to know what's needed locally. And really, Whitehall doesn't have the epitome of all knowledge. It's not always the most practical, whereas town halls are where local decisions can be practically interpreted.
And how tough is 2011 going to be?
I think it's going to be very tough, but we all knew that, and there's no choice. I think whoever had been in government, we would have had a difficult settlement. It's actually now up to us to deliver what we can, but make sure that the unintended consequences that can flow sometimes from large amounts of money being removed are actually understood by government.
Councils and local government workers have taken quite a battering over the last few months. What's your message to people working in local authorities as they head into the new year?
I know that from where I sit, they are a workforce second to none and are greatly appreciated by local residents. And when times are hard, I hope they don't get disheartened. Just look at the moment. On a daily basis, people are going out and keeping the roads clear. There are people fighting through the snow to see somebody gets their meals on wheels. You know, all those kinds of things often go unnoticed when you're talking at a general national level. But on a daily basis, people are doing their utmost. And people go into public service because they believe in serving the public. So I want to say, you know, really, you are appreciated, even though on a bad day you might not think so.
Well, Margaret, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.